In this session, I want to discuss and demonstrate storage VMotion. As you may know, one of the goals for the virtualized data center is to eliminate downtime as related to hardware issues. Here at VMware, we continue to develop those technologies that help you, our customers, achieve this goal. By now, you've all heard about VMotion, which is the ability to migrate a virtual machine from one physical server to another while it's running live without any service interruptions. We've now extended the benefits of VMotion to the storage space, and we've called it Storage VMotion. With Storage VMotion, you can migrate a virtual machine's disk files from one LUN to another LUN without any downtime to the end users. In our previous release, we had enabled Storage VMotion, but we didn't have the UI, so you had to write scripts and use third-party or use third-party plugins to utilize those features. We've now added that UI and a number of other technical and usability enhancements that actually better help you manage the process of performing a storage VMotion. So let's go ahead and walk through the process of performing a storage VMotion. So here you'll notice in our inventory tab, I've got a data center set up. And in that data center, I've created two clusters. I've got my development cluster and I've got my production cluster. In my development cluster, I've got several VMs, and I've been testing in a usability type environment. You'll notice that down here, W2K3 Web App 2, this is the VM that I actually want to relocate. He is currently sitting on an iSCSI array in that data store, as I've highlighted here, called VMFS_iSCSI array 01. Now, I want to move him and do some more testing such as load and longevity, but I want to move him to a fiber channel array in order to do that testing. Well, the process is pretty simple in order to achieve that. So I'm going to start by right-clicking on the VM, selecting Migrate. Now, once I select Migrate, the Migrate Virtual Machine Wizard comes up. I have two options here. I want to change the host, which is what you remember and know as VMotion. Or I can select Change the Data Store. Now that's the Storage VMotion component. So I select Change the Data Store. I say Next. It validates the actual resource pool in the cluster. In this case, I don't have a resource pool set up, so it validates to the base cluster. I now say Next. Now it brings up my actual selected data store. Now I'm going to expand that so you can see in there. Let me sort it by the name. And you'll notice that basically I have an iSCSI array here, which is the current array that we're on, and I have the fiber channel array, which is my target array. I'm going to select the target array, say Next, and it goes to the disk format screen. Now on this screen, you'll notice three options. You may not have seen these before, so I'm going to talk real briefly about that. You have two options, thin provisioned or thick. In a thin provisioned disk, if I had, let's say, an 8 gig VMDK, within that VMDK, I was only actually using about 4 gig. A thin provision disk would literally only take up somewhere in the order of a 4 gig on the actual data store, and it would grow as needed. Whereas a thick provision disk is actually allocating all of the actual space, in this case 8 gig, for that entire VM on the data store. So we'll talk more in another session about thin provisioning. And then, of course, you probably recognize this from your standard VMotion. You got the high priority and the low priority. Say Next and Finish. So now you'll notice down here the relocate virtual machine task, virtual machine storage task, is actually in progress. So while that's doing its thing, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the other parts as related to storage VMotion. So storage VMotion is for fiber channel to fiber channel, iSCSI to iSCSI, iSCSI to fiber channel, and vice versa. Some of the scenarios that I've seen customers actually utilizing storage VMotion is when they want to do, say, a storage upgrade, and you want to incur no downtime for your clients or for your VMs. You basically do a storage VMotion off the old array to the newly presented array, and everybody continues to run business as usual. Typically used in things like a tech refresh or other scenarios like that. Other additional scenarios and where this might actually be utilized fairly effectively is when you want to switch from tiered level storage. If you're going from a tier 1 storage to actually archive older VMs, if you so desire, and you don't want to back them up or put them on tape, you could actually do a storage migration to a lesser costly set of disk or a lesser costly array. And vice versa. If you actually, in this case that I gave here, the example I gave here, the dev environment, I've done some testing. Now I want to actually I want to migrate it into production. I could actually do that by using storage VMotion or migrate it onto a better tiered storage. So there you have it. That's storage VMotion.